Okay, this video is going to take us through what we call Sentinel Values. You should be on page 9 of your notes, and this is from the textbook 4.5, section 4.5, Processing with Sentinel Values. All right, so we're still doing loops here, but now we're going to use a Sentinel value. Well, what is a Sentinel value? So what happens is this. Let's look at this code, first of all, to find out what is going on with it. And so I forgot to bring this up. There we go. Okay, so what's happening here is, of course, we're using the scanner class. We have the roll score. So that means, so what's going to happen is the user is going to roll a pair of dice and enter going to enter their score. It's going to, during this program, we're going to calculate how many times the user rolls the dice. So we're not going to determine how many. It's going to, we don't know how many times the user is going to roll the dice. So it's a form of an indefinite loop is really what it is. And so now we have a total score, so we're going to keep track of a total score, and what kind of a variable keeps track of a running's total. And that, of course, is an accumulating variable. And we also have a variable that's going to count, a counter variable, so to speak, and that would be num of rolls. It's going to keep track of how many times something has happened. All right, so if we look in here, what's going to be happening in this program here, we're going to ask the user to enter the score of their roll, and then, and now notice I have blocked out stuff that you have on your notes. So you should really be looking at in the video course to see what's going on. We're going to enter the score of the roll, and of course that's going to be stored, and then we're going to count. Each time it goes through the loop, it's going to add a 1 to the number of rolls, so it counts it, and then it's going to keep track of the total score. It's going to keep adding the new roll score to the total score and keeps the running total. All right, so that's what's going to happen. Now, we do not know how many times it's going to go through the loop because we're going to let the user decide when they're done rolling the dice. We're going to let the user know when, let the user decide. And so here's how we do that. The programmer in their code does something like this. It says enter the score of the roll, or -1 to quit. So if the user can either enter a number like 6 or 12 or 10 or something like that, but if the user says, you know, I'm done here, I don't want to roll anymore, then they can enter a -1. All right, so that, and what we're gonna call this is this is your Sentinel value. So let's do this. So this is your Sentinel. Oh, okay, that's a problem. So the Sentinel value is what we're talking about, is -1. So you should mark that down in your notes here. So -1 is called the Sentinel value. It's the value that the user can use to tell the program or the compiler, I don't want to roll anymore. So in order to stop the loop, we want this -1 to tell the compiler to stop the loop. Well, what line of code here is going to stop the loop? I hope you're thinking of this. It's line 12, because remember, the Boolean expression is what stops the loop if it's false. So where is this Sentinel value going to be stored? And I hope you're thinking. So this Sentinel value is going to be stored in roll score. So if that's roll score going to store the -1 to stop the loop, then what would be our loop control variable, so to speak, that goes in here? It's going to be roll score. So roll score is going to be the loop control variable. This is what will control the variable. I'm sorry, control the loop. Now, what does roll score have to be in order for the loop to be executed again and to keep going? What does it need to be? Well, we know what it needs to not be. It needs to not be the Sentinel value, because the Sentinel value is the signal that the user types in to stop the loop. And so this is a use of not. So the roll score which is going to store either a score or it's going to store the Sentinel value. So this we say is not equal to -1. And so what we could say here is we could say, so what we're really saying is while the roll score is not the Sentinel value, then execute the loop. Hopefully that makes sense. And so so let's say that we do this then. Okay, so right now, of course, we're saying the roll score is 0. You could really put anything in there. It doesn't matter because it's going to be replaced anyways, as long as you don't put -1. So, all right, so this is 0 is not equal to -1. That's true, so we go through the loop. And so we ask the user to enter a roll, score of a roll. So they enter a roll, and then this reads it, stores it, and so let's say it's something like 6. Okay, now, what we need is, we need to know, we don't want that score to be added to the total score, otherwise that's going to be a problem. And so -1 is a signal to stop the loop. So if the roll score is -1, we don't want it to go add 1 to the number of rolls, and we don't want the total score to be updated. So we can use this same Boolean expression in the if statement in here. So we use the same Boolean expression inside here, because that kept the loop going, and this is also going to keep us going with, we're going to know, well, we must have a valid score. If it's not -1, we have a valid score, a roll of the dice. And so we increment the number of rolls, we update the total score, the running score, and all this is the ending brace. All right, and then then at that point we're down here and we go up here, back up to while. Now because it was a valid roll number or amount, then we go, like 6, then 6 is not equal to -1, so we're good. And we go through again. Maybe they enter a 7. All right, it's going to go through this whole process because 7 is not equal to -1. It's going to come up here and go, okay, so now we're going to ask again because 7 is not equal to -1. So now what happens when the user types a -1? Now the roll score becomes -1, and it's stored in this roll score right here on this line. The next line is the if statement. And so roll score is not equal to -1, but it is -1. So this is false now. And so therefore it ignores the if clause or the if branch. It goes back to while, and it says if roll score is not equal to -1, but it is equal to -1, so it's false, it kicks out of the loop. And now we can go in here and tell them what their total score is and how many rolls they made in there, and they're done. All right, so that's the Sentinel value. A couple things you need to write down on your notes about Sentinel values that are just would make sense. So the Sentinel value we'll put up here is a value entered by the user that stops the loop. This is something that you can write below your code here. It's a value entered by the user that stops the loop. And so again, here it is. This is what the user enters so that it will stop the loop. The other thing that you want to make sure you don't go is you know, I'm not going to have you write that. You don't need that. I will give you this, though. This is one of the things that the textbook says, so let's go ahead and add it in here. It serves, the Sentinel value serves as a signal for termination. The Sentinel value serves as a signal. It signals the compiler, hey, I'm done here. This is from the user to the compiler. To the computer, to the program. So it serves as a signal for termination. Now this may be obvious, but the other thing is that the programmer is the one that determines what the Sentinel value is going to be. All right, so the programmer tells the user the value to use as a Sentinel. So that's something that you got to have. So as you notice here, it says the programmer says enter the score of the roll or -1 to quit. So so the user or the programmer tells the user what the Sentinel value is. And then the last thing is that the Sentinel value. Let's see if I can. Oh, I guess I don't have a box. So the last thing that we want to put in here is that the Sentinel value must not be a valid user input. So if you have a program where the user could enter a -1 as, you know, intentionally that would fit the program, you don't want to use a -1 then. So you'd have to come up with something else. But see, since we're dealing with scores of rolls, of rolling the dice, -1 would not be a valid entry. And so since it's not a valid entry, then we use that to be the Sentinel, the one that signals the compiler that I'm ready to stop. All right, so the user gets to choose when to stop. All right, that is the Sentinel value, and that's it for the notes.